I am John DeVore. Welcome to the channel, and congratulations for making it to the final chapter, part 3 of 3 of my conversation with Michael Lavorgna. And in this final chapter, we essentially run through the various HiFi magazines that he has written for and talk a little bit about how he got into the HiFi reviewing position that he's now in. Thank you for watching and enjoy part 3. So in part 2, we talked a lot about how you've brought your art school or art education and your art practice into your writing and your reviewing and things like that. But I would like to back up a little bit for this section and talk about your reviewing career. And so I know you started at Six Moons.
I did, yeah.
That's when I first met you. You were writing for Six Moons. You had just started, or just recently started writing for them.
Yeah, the way that came about, at that time I was reading Six Moons. In particular, Jeff Day, the gear that he was interested in matched a lot of the things I was interested in.
So low power tubes and high sensitivity speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had hunted down these, sort of embarrassing again, not really. I had hunted down these interconnects and speaker cables made by a company based in France called
Fi. You're talking about the Fi.
Fi.
Yes.
And I don't remember what got me onto these.
Fi was a company who the man passed away several years ago, but he made exquisite full range drivers as well,
which were in the solo box.
Yes. Yeah.
And he also made cables, interconnects. And
He made his full range drivers with bronze chassis. I would point out.
Yes, he
An
did.
influence on something that I have done only very late in my career. But yeah.
Yeah. That's, you know what, I hadn't put that together either, but
Yeah.
that's, absolutely the case, Yeah, they were beautiful, and the solo box were open back, so you could actually, you could see them. Anyway, so he made these cables, I read about them, I was interested in them. They were not very expensive cables in the grand scheme of things. So I bought them, and I really liked them, more than what I owned, and what I owned cost a lot more money.
Right.
So I was like, this is great, so I wrote
Right.
Jeff Day an email about this. And so Jeff responded to that email and said something to the effect of, have you ever considered writing about this? And so he put me in touch with Serjan. I essentially padded out that writing about those same interconnects. And Serjan published it and asked me if I'd like to continue.
Oh, wow. So essentially the email that you wrote to
Jeff,
a writer for the magazine that you followed, you just fleshed it out, and that became
that was the first review.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. And so when I was brought on, it was kind of agreed on that my focus would be low power tube amps, single driver speakers, that kind of thing.
So you had your Sun Audio rig already at that point.
Yeah,
that
with the
already
Kane & Kane speakers in.
Right.
Yeah, and I bought the Kane & Kane speakers from In Living Stereo.
Right.
So to fill in a little more history, and that's where I first met Jonathan Halpern.
Right.
Jonathan was working there.
Right. And Living Stereo is a hi-fi shop in Manhattan, run by Steve Michaud, who I know from years ago. We worked together. It must have been in '93 or '94 at Stereo Exchange. So yeah, that's all the sort of the New York circle there.
Right. So when I bought those Kane & Kanes, Jonathan had I believe, just started to bring in Shindo. So the Cortese, is that how people?
Maybe, yeah.
That amplifier was in the shop at some point.
Right.
And I was like, the Shindo gear with that Shindo
I
green.
think that was like the first amp the second amp he brought in after the Montiel, or maybe the first.
I think it was the first.
Yeah, with the F2A tubes. And I remember really being impressed with that too, because Steve was also my first dealer. He sold my speakers there, so I got to hear it.
Yeah, but I remember seeing that amplifier. It didn't look like other amplifiers. It was
it didn't.
That Shindo green, and I was just like, what's that?
Right.
What's that? So so that's how I got involved with Six Moons. And one thing that happened there that interested me was someone got in touch with me via email after reading one of my reviews and shared that he owned car freight little bighorns, extremely rare at that time.
Those are Lowther based, I think, right?
Yeah.
So they're basically a single Lowther driver in a huge back horn that was sort of spiraled, right?
Yes.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And by that point, they were no longer made, but I had read about those speakers in Listener magazine years ago. So I wanted to hear these speakers.
Right.
And I'm like, how can I work this out? So I spoke to Serjan. Essentially, we came up with the idea of doing this road tour concept.
Your road tours, yes.
Where I went to his house and wrote about his system.
Right. I loved those road tours. Those were great.
I really enjoyed those quite a bit because it was so much about the aspects of the hobby that I really enjoy. Mm-hmm. Getting to know people. Why is it important to them? Mm-hmm. And how does it fit in their lives? That was kind of like the idea.
And you got a sense by reading the road tours of the people in them would be so different, and their systems would be so different. And so you get the sense that there are so many approaches. If you pick an audio writer and stick with that person, it's becomes almost like one of those echo chambers where you start to feel like this is the only way to do it, and everything else they're all just they just don't get it, and you know, and it's just not true. It's like there are so many different ways to come at it, and you know, you can come at it from opposite ways and end up even in something that actually in many ways is very similar and equally satisfying, right? Even though nothing in it is recognizably similar to. So
yeah, you know, and I hadn't thought about it, but going back to something we touched on in the previous video, and this idea of being away at college and feeling free to be whoever you want to be, and not have to conform to this, wear the same clothes. I mean, I remember it's I think it was in 8th grade, I, for whatever reason, bought a pair of cowboy boots. I just wanted to have a pair of cowboy boots.
Right.
And I got abused for these cowboy boots, man. It was like, and it's such a small thing.
Right.
Like, who gives a shit what shoes you decide to wear? But where I grew up, it was a big deal.
People didn't give a shit, yeah.
So I think, you know, it seems to me to be the case that these road tours and digging into these differences fit into that, like into my area of interest that says, no, there isn't, you know, we don't have to conform to anything in this hobby. I mean, of course, you know, ideally we're all after the same goal, which is connection.
And at this time, you had a very specific specialty.
I did.
You know, you had the very high sensitivity speaker and the very low power tube amps, which is, it is a famously mocked sliver of high-end audio.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for you to be going off and you know, just and like enjoying and talking about and, you know, exploring these vastly different, you know, high power and planar speakers or anything, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, covered the gamut, really.
Yeah, that was great. Those were great, the road tours. And you're sort of doing that again.
Yeah, I brushed it off.
But let's try to go slightly chronologically, though.
Okay.
So, all right, so 6 Moons.
Right.
Then,
Right. So I wrote a, for lack of a better word, a think piece for 6 Moons. Just something that, I guess, something that came to mind, and some things that were on my mind that I wanted to write about. And it was published in 6 Moons. And Stephen Mejias, who at the time was working with, working at Stereophile, got in touch with me via emails and shared that he really enjoyed this.
What was the think piece?
You know what? Maybe I'll remember.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't remember exactly which. It was the first one I wrote.
I can type it in titles here when we figure it out afterwards. That's fine.
Yeah. So Stephen, got in touch and said he really enjoyed it. And would I mind if he shared it with John Atkinson,
who was then editor-in-chief of Stereophile Magazine?
Right. With the idea being that it was basically Stephen was asking me if I wouldn't mind submitting this to John Atkinson for possible inclusion in the magazine as we see it.
Okay, right. Which is their editorial page, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So I said, yes, please do.
Right.
Go ahead. And John... even
though that was your dad's audio magazine at the time.
Right. But, so John Atkinson read it and enjoyed it and asked me to, kind of flesh it out a bit more. And it ended up being published in the magazine.
Wow.
As we see it. So I didn't tell my father any of this stuff. I just sent him a copy of the magazine when I got it. and with a sticky note on it, it just said read page 1. And he flipped that I'm going to get emotional, but he flipped that I was in the magazine.
Wow.
Like he really did, and he passed away not all that long after that. So it was really
right. Because that was really his magazine that he read the whole time, all the way through.
Right.
I mean, that's like the real deal.
Yeah. So
and a lot of the gear that I see in his systems, that was all classic, 80s, 90s stereophile cover stuff.
Absolutely.
Like the Levinson and the 801s and everything. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, of course he had a tremendous amount of respect for John Atkinson and the measurements and that the whole approach.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a big deal.
So in the timeline, after 6 Moons is not right away Stereophile. You were doing Twittering Machines at the same time. Twittering Machines version 1 was kind of in the background while you were still at 6 Moons. Or no, after?
No, I think it was after. In brief, there was another writer at 6 Moons who lived in New Jersey.
Right.
And he asked if I would like to get together in New York and go record shopping. So we met. It was the first time I met him. And he pitched me over lunch on an idea for a new online magazine called American Wired. And he asked me if I'd be interested in designing and building and running the website and doing reviews for it.
Right.
So this was while both of us were still writing for 6 Moons. So as soon as I got back home, I called Sir John, let him know that, this was being discussed. Mm-hmm. And Sir John was all for it. He said, yeah.
Right.
It's a great opportunity, go for it. So American Wired launched, and it launched as as a monthly magazine.
It was it wasn't a PDF though. It was like a monthly. It would sort of come out once a month. It would sort of be a whole issue.
Exactly.
Right.
And it had a cover.
It was beautiful. I remember it. Yeah, it was really.
I had a lot of fun making those covers.
Yeah, the covers were amazing. Yeah. And you had some good people writing.
Ken McAuliffe was the music editor.
Right.
And there were a number of music writers. I don't remember how many, but a lot.
Right.
It was for real.
Yeah.
I mean, each month, when those issues, I'll call it, came out, I mean, there were like maybe 10 gear reviews.
Right.
20 or more music reviews, film reviews.
Really impressive for monthly, yeah.
Film reviews, food reviews.
Right.
I mean, it was really this broad spectrum of interests. Jules Coleman was the editor of the gear of the.
That's right. Jules was in it. Yeah. Jules also from 6 Moons.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, unfortunately, it lasted, I think, maybe 4 months.
Right.
And then completely fell apart.
Just imploded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so after that, I think I started Twittering Machines V1.
Right, because Twittering Machines had a similar vibe in that it was multidisciplinary in a way, in that same kind of way.
Right, right.
And there's also, what about the one for Kavi? What is it? Inner Fidelity.
Inner Fidelity.
Yeah. That's another beautiful project that you were involved in.
Yeah, that started as a print magazine.
Right.
Based in Finland.
Right.
And Kavi also was a 6 Moons writer.
Right.
He was a philosophy professor, and so was Jules Coleman by trade.
Right.
So they knew each other because they were in a similar area of philosophy.
Like jurisprudence or something, yeah.
So yeah, Kavi started this print magazine and asked me if I would be interested in designing some of the covers for the magazine and also writing some things. So that lasted, I forget how long, but. And then I wrote a few reviews. I wrote something about Paul Clay.
Paul Clay, who is the artist who made the piece called Twittering Machines that that your website is named after.
Yeah.
Right.
And this piece for Inner Fidelity was about Twittering Machines.
Right.
A Twittering machine, the painting. That's my
right. Yeah. The strange little thing that like audiophiles should understand, intimately.
Yeah, it seemed to me to be a nice parallel. Mm-hmm. Right, so that lasted for a while. I don't recall exactly how long, but it was a great magazine because he covered art.
Yep. Yeah. Again,
in their
that
music
same sort of that excellent cross pollination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he was very interested in fine art, in the world of art. So, and it continues to this day online, Fidelity.
Right.
And it's still wonderful. He's a very interesting, very interested person. He's got a broad range of interests, and it comes across.
Right. The interested part is key. That's it's the same thing that makes your site interesting, is that you are clearly an interested person.
Yeah.
And notice things and want to bring it into the fold.
Yeah. I think the next step was I had written, I think, another As We See It for Stereophile. And then John asked me if I'd be interested in covering the first Newport Beach show. And so I did, and that went well. And then the magazine decided to launch these specialized sites. Fidelity was the first. That was Tyler Herson's and headphones only.
Headphones only, right.
And then AudioStream was the next.
Fremer didn't already have. Didn't he already have? No. Okay.
Fidelity was the first.
That was okay.
Yeah, and then it was sometime after, like months and months.
Right.
Then AudioStream, and John and Keith Prey, the publisher, Stereophile, contacted me to interview for that position, editor of AudioStream.
Right.
And history tells a story. I mean, I got the job.
Right.
Worked there for over 6 years.
Yeah.
Right, and that was computer audio.
Computer audio only, which I always thought was it's in such utterly stark contrast to everything that you had done up to then.
Yeah.
Which was so broad and so multidisciplinary and joyful ability to absorb it all and like relate it all.
Yeah.
So so maybe it wasn't as great a fit. I don't know. In my opinion, I don't know.
I had a background in IT. I had worked in information technology
Right.
for about 18 years. So,
Right.
I mean, I know that was.
You clearly knew. I mean, yeah, you were clearly one of the most important knowledge bases for all that early streaming and getting that stuff. Like I mean, I don't know how many times I called you and asked you the stupidest questions.
Well,
I'm sure.
That back then, and we're talking 2011.
Right. It was new.
It was it was still pretty ratty out there.
Right. And formats were changing. And
Everything was it wasn't friendly. And I was very, very grateful to have that job. And I worked at it and tried to do a good job and make it, understandable and
it was
enjoyable.
Good, yeah.
And
aside from the reviews, the steady flow of reviews, you had again you put in some pretty good and interesting think pieces, I thought.
Well, yeah, I always put think pieces in, and I also did a lot of music
reviews. Yeah.
Music reviews. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this friend from Bennington, Joe, for a while.
Oh, same Joe from the first section. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, wrote a monthly music
right, those
piece.
Were great.
Yeah. He introduced me to a shit ton of music over the years. Yeah, and then there was this really fun series that I did called Lovely Recordings, and this was readers would submit favorite.
I forgot
records.
About that. That was that was a really good segment.
Yeah, I mean, I love that.
And I love that. I love that you're drawing in. I mean, one of the things that I just can't even imagine, and I was blown away, and I am blown away by like guys like Steve Guttenberg who can do it, and Darko who can do it, and when you were doing that site, just the ability to, first of all, to have to generate content like that, and to generate sort of fresh content that wasn't this sort of like, I'm going to fit component A into this template and it's just going to autofill and I'm going to publish it.
Yeah.
There's so much of what's out there is like that. And that, I remember now, the Lovely Recordings was amazing.
Yeah.
It was like you plugged into your readers and it was a whole new on-ramp of cool stuff and information
and very much like...
And a snapshot of something totally different.
Right. And very much like this... the road tours introducing myself and the readers to this broad range of gear and interests.
Yeah.
The lovely recordings did the same thing
I
for
totally
music.
did. Yeah.
I mean, from one to the next, you're all over the place,
Right.
Completely all over the place,
Right.
as opposed to me.
And you would post it, and it would post with no judgment, and it would be such a colorful and contrasty thing. That was a great.
I'd love to do it again. I'm not. It might, people would just have to email in their list, which is what
some
they ended up
variant
doing.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I may give it a go because it was very educational. I mean, I discovered tons of music, and there's really nothing more that I enjoy than being turned on to new music.
Yeah.
It's like
you hear a snippet of something, and you're just like, "What was that?" And then you go in and find it on Bandcamp or whatever, and you're just like, "Oh."
And especially some of my favorites of those were lists of let's say 25 records, and I didn't know any of them, not one. And I was like, what is this?
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
I mean, you think, right? You think. So I select a record a week. I did it at AudioStream. I continue to do it at Twittering Machines each Friday. And you could think, oh, I cover a lot of music, right? Oh gosh, I publish music, and
that's 52 records a year. Right.
It's like this little tiny sliver.
Yeah. The video. I'm going to talk about myself for a second. The video that I shot a month or so ago with Steve Guttenberg. His idea was to talk about photos that customers of DeVore Fidelity have sent in of their systems. And it was amazing. It was like road touring.
Yeah.
It didn't have the diversity of speakers because they were all my customers sending the photos in. But again, it was glimpses of very different setups, very different rooms, and it spoke volumes of how many different kinds of people all kind of can converge on this hobby and how wonderful it is. I want to start doing videos I'm going to start doing those videos. I'm going to thank you, Steve Guttenberg. I'm going to take that idea and just do them periodically because it's just, I love sharing that stuff so that people can see it's not all like this. Everyone sees pictures of like your system here or my system in my office, and they think that that's the way a system is supposed to look.
Right.
And it's just not the case.
Yeah, no, Steve Guttenberg does a great job with the
viewer systems.
Yeah.
The viewer system.
Yeah,
Great.
It's fascinating. Yeah. It really is. Yeah, I really enjoy seeing the diversity. I mean, even what people have on their walls fascinates me.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. The rooms that they're in, it says as much about the gear that's there. Yeah. Yeah. Even the way the photo is taken. It's just everything about it is just, they're great. They're these incredibly dense packets of information, fresh information.
Yeah.
That's cool stuff.
And it makes perfect sense. I mean, people put a lot of time, effort, and passion into building their hi-fi.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to want to share that and say, look, like this is mine.
So AudioStream, all of those specialty websites went away.
Except for Analog Planet.
Except for Mike
is still going,
Right. And so after that, that's basically the next thing you did is Twittering Machines version 2, which is what is now your current thing.
Yeah. It was a few months after I was let go from AudioStream that I started Twittering Machines. Yeah. Restarted it, right? Because it did exist, but restarted it as what it is today.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
this was awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Tons of information. There's going to be at least 3 videos out of this, depending on how long we make them. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Cool. That concludes my 3-part conversation with Michael Lavorgna. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.